share it to me, and I'll put it on my platform. So I did a walkaway story, just me walking through my neighborhood through Brooklyn, coming home from work one day, just telling how I left the Democratic Party. And when I shared it with him, he shared it and it went viral.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So what was your story? Like, what made you walk away from the Democratic Party?
Yeah, I mean, it's to make a long story short, I mean, my dad's an Army Major veteran, so, I lived in Germany for 5 years as a child. I saw the Berlin Wall fall when I was a kid.
Wow.
Always had love for America, very patriotic American. And, just growing up as a Democrat, my mom told me when I registered at 18 to vote, she said, vote for the best candidate, don't vote for, a party or anything like that. My parents, I got older, I realized they were Democrats. As time went by, I never felt like I had to vote Democrat. So,
Right.
Yeah, so after, voting Democrat for most of my life, after 8 years of Obama, I kind of saw a lot of corruption and a lot of things behind the scenes that are happening that really upset me about the party. So I decided to look at the Republican Party for the first time in 2012 with Herman Cain and Ron Paul. And after the media kind of messed up their chances, I decided to vote Republican again with Dr. Ben Carson. So that whole media kind of stepped in and messed up his chances too. So I was like 3 candidates I was going to vote for that the media messed up their chances.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so maybe it's like, okay, what do I vote for? So I saw how Trump handled the media. So when I saw Trump, I was like, okay, well, what is Trump running on? So when I studied Trump some more, I saw his policies. I liked what he was running on. And I said, if he's about his word, I'm going to support him. So that's what kind of made me officially walk away and vote for Trump for the first time.
Definitely. And the bottom line is they want us to feel like we're alone and that we're the minority, so that people just get scared and kind of back away, and people don't feel like they have allies in this, when in reality there's a lot more of us than there are of them. They just it's a psychological game.
Oh, yeah.
Basically, right? It's like a psyop on the people. But it's also about censorship, it's about silencing speech, penalizing people for having certain opinions. They want to talk all the day about diversity, but they don't want to talk about diversity of thought and mind and political diversity. They want everyone to lock and step, go along with their opinions. It's definitely scary, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, definitely. And like to say, the Democratic Party, I learned, being a Democrat for such a long period of time, like when I was 18, young and more naive, I had the Che Guevara shirts on and everything like that, and walking around like I knew everything about politics and all that stuff like that. But when I did the research, I realized, especially the history of both parties, Nestor Souza was a big help with kind of educating me on that. I was like, wow, I kind of learned a lot about the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party, they act like they're so diverse and inclusive, but they're only that way if you follow the narrative. And that's just it. If you don't follow the narrative, you'll see a lot of anger and hatred from the Democratic Party.
Absolutely. And I've heard that so many times, really and truly. I have some family members that went out on me for, how could you support Trump? It's like, well, you don't know what you're talking about. Everything you're quoting, you're talking about is just a mainstream media talking point, and it's not true. It's propaganda, right? So I guess that's probably one of the main problems, right? Like, we're seeing this issue with fake news in America, propaganda and fake news to vilify our fellow Americans and keep us all divided.
Yeah, no, definitely. The mainstream media has a lot to do. I mean, it's two things. It's a combination of corrupt politicians on both sides, not just Democrats, but Republicans as well, and the mainstream media. And that is beyond just. I mean, it's mostly MSNBC and CNNs of the world, but Fox News as well. So that is a big influence. And I remember when I was younger, I remember my friends' grandparents would always be like, when they were, we were kids, and they're like, oh, communism. And they would always hear about communism was from their generation. And they were like, oh, that television is going to ruin this country.
Right.
And you were like, okay, Grandpa, go to bed, kind of thing. But I look back at those individuals back then, like, were they so crazy back then, looking back at those elderly people back then that were talking about communism and how the TV is going to brainwash? Because it really showed me how much control the television has over society.
Absolutely.
I remember we all went through a hurdle when it comes to the mainstream media. I remember when I was growing up watching, I used to watch MSNBC, CNN, Don Lemon, Joy Reid, Rachel Madcow, all of them. I watched them religiously when I was growing up. And I had a good friend of mine, Doug, who, shout out to my friend Doug, by the way, who became conservative before I did. And we were close friends. We always talk deep conversations about politics and life and stuff like that. And I remember we got in this very heated argument right before, probably 2 years before the election, with 2016 elections, about politics and Democratic Party, Republican Party, and it it got really heated. It was in front of his family around Thanksgiving time, and it got to the point where we were kind of yelling at each other. His brother-in-law was there, who's very liberal guy, very SJW type, and he was like, "Oh, Black Lives Matter." And we were both like, "F Black Lives Matter,"
Yeah.
And so even as a Democrat, I was like, "No, I ain't doing the radical leftist stuff." But I said, look, I saw it was getting heated, and we knew as friends we're not going to get physical, nothing like that. But his family was kind of looking like we were crazy. So I said, look, man, let's agree to disagree. Let time determine who's right and who's wrong in this situation. And as time went by, I saw a lot of things we were arguing about that were topics that were the argument at the time. He was right on because I was going through the mainstream media, and he was, doing his own research.
Right,
so
right.
I called him up one day, probably a year afterwards, and I was like, hey, man, the argument we got, he's like, oh, man, I'm past, that's old news. I'm like, no, I'm talking about it. It said that, time has gone by. You were right on a lot of those topics. I'm going to start thinking more conservative about my politics from this point on. Mm-hmm. And he was like, oh, okay. And I was like, yeah, all right. He's like, see you later. I was like, all right, cool. And and we just, and I, he's respected me a lot years later because I made that call to him. Mm-hmm. But I said, I'm not afraid to be wrong. If I'm proven to be wrong, if I feel adamant about a subject and time has gone by and I'm wrong about it, I'll say, hey, I'm wrong. I'm not a god. I'm a human being. I can be wrong. It's okay.
No one's right 100% of the time.
No.
It's just not the way it is.
No. And it's just when people get to that point, though, is I see there's so much people struggle with that.
Right. And it seems like, because there was a guy, okay, who's carrying around a Nazi flag, but what he was doing was he was going, is this what you want? Is this what you want? This is coming to our country. This is like Nazi Germany. Papers, please. He was holding it up to make a political statement. Is this what you want? This is what's happened. And apparently the guy himself was from Europe. His family had come and fled from that, and so he was warning people.
Wow, and they took it way out of context.
So they take it out of context, they spin it out of control, they take the pictures, the photo ops, whatever, and then they paint this narrative that there's a bunch of horrible Nazi, white supremacist people there, and it's just not the truth. It's not reality.
It's what the media does, and I've learned even on a personal level about the media. I mean, I've been living in New York. There was an incident a few years ago that was an incident in Manhattan. That was when the Proud Boys got in a fight with altercation with Antifa in the city. Right. And I went to that event because I just started doing my videos at that time, with walkway and everything like that. So I went to interview Gavin McInnes. So he was speaking at the Metropolitan Republican Club at the time. And shout out to Ian, the Metropolitan Republican Club too. And Gavin was speaking there, and I went to go hopefully get an interview with him because I was looking more for the controversy side of things. I wanted to get everybody's point of view on matters. I don't want to just get one group. So I was hoping to get an interview with Gavin, and after the event was over, there was 3 or 4 Antifa when I arrived at the event, and about 3 hours later when the event was over, the whole block was covered by Antifa. So and they were chanting at us, Nazi scum, and all this crazy stuff or whatever.
Right.
So
Their typical moronic chants.
Of course, the same routine, the same 3 or 4 chants they have. They can't at least be creative and give some new chants or whatever.
Yeah. But same ones over and over.
Over and over again. So, the police are out there, and they did a great job of separating, both sides or whatever. And then when they separated us from both sides of the road, we walked about 3 or 4 blocks away, and about 5 or 6 members of Antifa broke off, and they waved at the end of the block where they knew eventually we were going to be walking towards. So I'm recording because when they're chanting Nazi scum, I start recording a Facebook Live to show people, hey, this is the Nazi scum they're talking about. A black guy walking around, the Hispanic guys with us, everything like that. So we're walking down the street, and one of the guys nudges into me, and I'm like, what's going on? And he's running towards an altercation because one of the Antifa members threw a water bottle at the Proud Boys. So they started to, respond back, and it got a little altercation.
Right,
and I recorded the altercation and shared it on Facebook Live, so they banned my account for 30 days. BuzzFeed takes my video, they cut me out of it, and the media takes it and they say, a white supremacist group attacks innocent anti-fascists in Manhattan. And that was their narrative of their story. Mm-hmm. So Antifa, didn't press any charges or anything like that. So the fact that Antifa didn't press charges, the state still wanted to do something about it. So Cuomo stepped in and said, if you guys don't press charges, we will. So the state pressed charges, and 2 of these guys ended up getting 4 years apiece in jail for a small altercation that was nothing, pretty much. I've seen worse fights in middle school, but the media takes it, they flip it totally upside down. January 6th was another situation. I saw them do the same thing. I was there on January 6th, and I saw, because I knew, I had a feeling something was going to happen that day. And the media, I don't never trust the media, so I don't ever want the media to be the ones to tell the story about what happens at a situation.
Right.
So, as we all know what happened on that day. So
try to counter the censorship and demonetization that we've been experiencing across the board, because not only are they just trying to silence us, they're actually going after us financially.
Yes.
They're cutting us off financially so that we can no longer afford to stay in business and do what we're doing. I know that there were a group of leftist activists that targeted Steve Bannon, his war room, and they targeted Breitbart as well.
Wow.
They got 90% of their funding pulled from Breitbart.
Wow.
Right, yeah, because what they were doing was they were going around and they were lobbying and they were basically harassing the ad agencies that do like the ads for website providing to then get them kicked off from those ads, like Google AdSense. Like, I'm sure you've heard about how people get kicked off of like Google AdSense, and a lot of like news sites, they rely heavily on advertising. So what QUX does, which is really revolutionary, is it changes the way the relationship between advertisers and creators is, and content creators. So there's more of a direct. So not only can someone like us create a creator profile, advertisers could create advertiser profiles, and the advertisers could actually send you a campaign request and say, hey, you know, your audience likes the same type of thing that I sell because your audience clicked a box, right? Because the audience gets to pick their own ad experience. So let's just say that 80% of your audience clicked that they are interested in guns and sporting goods, right? Okay. And they want to see ads related to that, right? It's like, then what you see is they would see that, you know, maybe the NRA would be matched up with you because they have a similar product. You have an audience that likes that product. They might think, hey, I'm going to send you an offer for running ads on your portal, and that's a way for you to monetize. So it just kind of revolutionizes the way things are done. It's more consent oriented, and I highly suggest you check it out and get yourself a portal, get on there.
Well, can I get access to a portal? Like, is that something you just go access, or do you got to be like, how's that work? Because I'm really interested.
Yeah, definitely. So you can actually create and build your own portals. You could build multiple portals on
really
there if you wanted to. Yeah.
Wow, this is revolutionary.
Cool. Yeah, it's like social media television. No. So definitely.